That's speculation.
In your experience as a firearms expert who fires a lot of guns, right? Would that be a common thing to do?
An objection is to speculation as to when, where, circumstances.
All right, I'll sustain the objection as to speculation.
Let's talk about stippling. The first shot, according to you, had stippling. Is that correct?
No,
It did not have any stippling.
none was observed.
And the second shot,
None was observed.
no stippling was observed.
Correct.
Is that what's in the ME's report?
I believe so.
That there was no stippling? Can I have a minute, Your Honor? When you were observing the autopsy, the ME didn't say anything about stippling?
I don't recall any mention about stippling.
And you didn't have a discussion with him about it?
We would have if he'd observed any.
And so if he said that to someone else, you would be surprised?
I don't know what he had in his notes. I didn't author his report.
Can you describe stippling for us? What that is?
Sure. It's basically a combination of particles that come out from behind or follow the projectile as it exits the barrel. A lot of times it's partial burned or unburned powder, and it's a short distance phenomena, so the person has to be extremely close for the pattern to actually present itself and the particles embed in the clothing or the skin.
So if stippling was found, how far away would the gun have to be from the victim
That depends on the gun.
on this .45 semi-automatic?
I am not an expert on the stippling patterns. That is something that we would have to send to the lab for. And what they would do is they would test it with witness panels at different distances to give that information.
Is there an estimate?
That's where it would come in. Usually the medical examiner, if they observe stippling, will give an estimate of close or contact.
So would you be surprised if he said 2 to 4 feet?
If that's what he says.
That if there's stippling, then the gun would have to be 2 to 4 feet.
It's possible, but I wouldn't hold my hat on that, no. I would have to have the gun tested for that.
Okay. And
Is
so,
this a good spot to break for the evening?
sure, Your Honor.
I mean, I'm not cutting you off. If you want to ask a few more questions, that's fine.
Nope, that's fine.
All right, we'll take our evening recess. Members of the jury, please remember the admonition. I'll remind you to specifically avoid any outside information, any information about this case outside this courtroom. And we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
All right, the jury is no longer present. Please be seated. Will you inform us in the morning of exhibits you anticipate that you might need during the rest of your cross-examination prior to us starting? Because there are a lot of photographs to try to sift through to get the ones that you may need. You have a habit of, when a witness answers a question, to add something on the end of their answer. For example, during this witness, you said, I wasn't aware of that. Another time you said, I don't know much about guns. On previous witnesses, you've said, that's what I recall, or I'm not really sure. When you say those types of things, it's a form of testimony, okay? So I'm going to caution you to try to refrain from doing that. After the answer, just move on to your next question, okay?
Sure.
All right. Anything else from the state?
Yes, Your Honor. I received information that a couple different detectives have been subpoenaed and asked to appear tomorrow. There was no phone number for them to call in to say they received their subpoena, and they were asking, I advise them that they need to come here, but I am happy to pass that along, or I wasn't sure if they need to come here tomorrow or not, but I've been asked to.
All right, so I'm clear. The defense subpoenaed a few detectives. The information in the subpoena says they need to appear tomorrow.
Correct, along with one civilian who also reached out to us, Joe Pongratz.
Okay, but was there,
Detective Moffett and Joe Pongratz are who I'm aware of, who were given a subpoena with no number to call and confirm, just says to come here tomorrow.
It was my understanding that the subpoenas were to say to call to check in beginning on the date tomorrow, because we didn't know where we would be at this point in trial.
who do you want them to call to see when they actually need to be here? Because obviously the state's not going to finish their case this week, I don't think.
Correct.
Give the defense their numbers, I don't know how, I just wanted, I mean, obviously if she wants them to come here, and I will tell them that, I just was passing that along as that is obviously.
So it sounds like the subpoena may have been missing some information of who they should check in with to make sure they report on the correct date and time. So who do you want them to call, those witnesses? Your investigator?
Yes.
And, okay, so we don't need to put it on the record, but the state will pass the investigator's number along, name and number along to those witnesses, and they'll call your investigator, but you're saying they don't need to report tomorrow, correct?
Correct. I didn't get to see those subpoenas. They went straight from my paralegal to OPDS, so I'm not quite sure what they said.
Okay, so I'll direct the state to provide that information, contact information, and that those witnesses just need to stay in contact with the investigator.
Perfect.
All right, anything else for before tomorrow
No, Your Honor, that's it.
from the defense?
Nope.
All right, we'll be at recess. Thank you. You can step down.
What time do you get back? I can't put her on the back of the motorcycle and drive her there, can I?
You could go with us. We could just all three. Okay, what are we doing?
Yeah, we're keeping it in the room right here.
And then bring it back
So that's a no.
if you'll let us.